All right, here we go. Back to the
Hey.
basics.
Back. December 17th. Not for long, but it's still 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. Listen to the Crushing Iron Podcast. This is episode 821.
Yes, and we're going to call it 10 Ways to Win an Ironman.
10 ways to win. Top 10 takes that we could, as age group athletes and coaches that we can tell, the best athletes on the planet how to do their job better, which is like generally like what most of those like post-world championship podcasts are about. But no, I know you didn't watch too much of it, but I watched the both the ladies and the men on Saturday and Sunday. It was, of all the races like in the last year, except for Kona, I guess, because that's pretty solid sweet spot. Like it starts at like I think 10:30, 11 o'clock local time, but with the time change, it made for like I think the coverage started at like 11:30. So that was, and it's like a 4-hour race because they're all done in like 3:30. It's like really like prime time, and it lined up very well for me because it started around 11:30 and went all the way up until the Tennessee Illinois basketball game. So it was a solid sports watching day on Saturday. But yeah, I had crowned for the third time in a row, Taylor Knibb as the Ironman 70.3 world champion, three-peat. A lot closer of a race than I think a lot of people would have predicted. We'll talk about that maybe here in a little bit. And then you saw a kind of it seemed, I know you didn't watch it, but it had a very Olympic feel of it with Hayden Wild, the hometown favorite. He and Kyle Smith pretty much leading from the entire way, and then him getting caught by I just want to call him Jelly Beans because it sounds cooler, but I guess it's Helligans, is how you pronounce it, or Jelly Beans, whatever you want to call it. He came by and just flew by Hayden while he was standing still with about maybe 3-4K to go. Ended up taking the win, which again, very, very similar feel as Hayden Wild, like shot out of the gates at the Olympics and was in front of Alex Yee by, I don't know, at least a quarter mile. And then you kind of slowly saw these signs of him like fading a little bit, getting a little tired. He didn't look nearly as like efficient. Now I was listening to some of the pre-race podcast interviews with people and with him, and he said he was aiming for a 105. And which is just insane, because that course is not flat. The run course is not flat there. And, this is one of his, I think, only like his second 70.3 middle distance effort. So I think post race, he said he went out a little bit too hot, which again, I think he must have done too at the at Olympics. But yeah, it was interesting to watch them unfold. Again, very similar to the 70.3, or excuse me, the Olympics. And then you saw Kat Matthews take the first ever female pro series win, took home a fat check, and she got second. So second at 70.3 world, second at Nice. And I think, I don't know when the last time, obviously it was at 2 seconds, but I want to say maybe Linda Cave or Jan Frodeno were the last like female, maybe Danielle Reef, but you haven't had that many that have done that well at both distances, especially going from, if you do like, way back, like I'm that old, back a few years ago when they always used to have I'm trying to prevent myself from saying that. I find myself doing it all the time. Like, yeah, way back when, like I'm that old. I'm not, I'm freaking 44. But back when they always had the 70.3 World Championships before the Ironman, you have like, people trying to win both. But most of the time when you do this giant build for long distance, for full distance, you come back to short distance, you lose some of your speed. But Kath Matthews did not show that. She showed being a pretty well-rounded athlete. But yeah, I thought they're great to watch. The coverage is pretty good. An incredibly long season for these pros, and I think you're going to see things change up next year with the T100 series. How many contracts are trying to give out, and the requirement to race all those. I do have to say, with the Ironman Pro Series, which is a response to the PTO 100 and what they wanted to do with their race series. That's a lot of racing, and I do think it left a little. I don't know. To me, it felt like even the big races, like watching Kona for the men and women and Nice. Everybody just kind of looked a little beat up. I mean, and I don't want to call it over racing because I mean these are professional athletes. This is their living. They got to race as much as they can. And I mean, if I'm them, to me it's very much like like being a realtor when things are really hot. You got to just do what you got to do for the couple years where things are selling like hotcakes, and because you don't know when things are going to die down again. You might be selling that many houses over the course of a year. That's the kind of purple patch they're in right now. T100's giving out a lot of cash. I don't think it's sustainable. Ironman's giving a lot of cash. I think they'll follow through with it. So there's just a lot of money to be made if you're a pro triathlete, and there's not really that many opportunities. So I think they're probably again, I don't want to say over racing, but they're definitely stretching the amount of like matches you can burn over the course of the year. And I got to think that is catching up with a lot of athletes because you had the Olympic cycle this year with that many races. You had Nice, you had Kona, you had 70.3 Worlds, you had all these extra races, people trying to make money. It's definitely the most these athletes are racing since I can remember following the sport. And I do think it's beating some athletes up. So I think this next year you'll probably see a little more strategery from the top level pros on one, picking either the Ironman Pro Series or because I think the guy that won the Ironman Pro Series, I think it was Greg Barnett. I think he only won one race this year. It took him $250,000. I mean, so I think like you're going to see some people starting to pick and choose what suits them the best after they kind of did a trial run this year, which again, I think is another good, not maybe an apples to apples, but maybe an apples, maybe a red apple to green apple comparison for age group athletes. And when they look at, this coming year and looking at their calendar and how they want to space things out and what kind of races they want to do and what's too much, like, a lot of athletes want to have fun. You like to race a ton. I mean, this, you've got plenty of athletes that probably want to race every other weekend. And I've got some that it's hard to see them race like once a year. I think everyone in between. So, as everyone kind of thinks through next year and what they want to accomplish, sometimes it's, trial and error, what's going to work, what's not going to work, how your body's going to hold up. And, ultimately I think it comes down, especially for age group athletes, like, do I want to do good at 6 or 7 races? Or do I want to, with the opportunity to do great at one and probably terrible in a few other ones because you race so much? Or do I really want to focus on trying to do the best and to be great at 2 races? And I think that's a tough decision for most athletes to make because it puts tremendous pressure on that one race to get it all right.
It's interesting you took that perspective from the get-go because I was thinking about, I knew it was the 70.3 Worlds and everything, but it didn't really like sink in really in some ways because I was like, what? It's a weird time to be thinking about at this late in the season, kind of like getting your shit together and going balls to the walls. You know what I mean? It's just, it's like, yeah. And the way you're talking about that is like, to me, that just feels in a way like it's diluting everything. I'm looking at like the NBA, they're playing the Grey Cup in-season tournament or some shit like that. I'm like, what even is this, man? It's just adding stuff to add stuff. And you're right. I mean, obviously these pros are making, money and they got to go get it and everything like that. But is it like good in the big picture? I don't know. I mean, let's face it. This sport is about the age grouper, and to be like, we've always felt like this. I feel like, the races aren't for the pros necessarily. I mean, it's great to have them, and I'm not like dissing that, but I just think it just sort of takes some splash away from the whole, like even Kona now, and they're splitting them up, and it's just like, what's going on, man? They're just adding more shit to. And it's harder to follow. I mean, at least for me, it's like it's harder to kind of get vested in it. I remember we used to get like so stoked about Kona, and it would be like a big deal. And now it's split half all around the world, and different races, and all these things are going on. I suppose it's sort of like it'll all settle at some point. But it's like baseball season. Like now there's what do they have, the preseason world tournament or something like that. It's just like, enough's enough, man.
Well, I mean, I think when you look at What'd you say?
I'm just being a little cynical about it because I
Well,
just,
no, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, I agree. Again, like, maybe this is the old hat, me
it's like
tossing it in
more
there,
isn't always
but
better, man. It's like, can we make an
yeah.
event, like a big event like Kona, really be a big event, or is it just going to be all like half-assed now? Not like it's half-assed, but you know what I mean? It just doesn't have the same punch as it used to be.
Well, you don't get, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, I remember last year, I don't think I missed a single televised, quote unquote televised race. And then this year there were so many that I was like, meh. Like, I think a lot of it too is like, I'm going to see one next weekend because there's
That's
another
what I
one.
mean,
I'm going
yeah.
to see one and like, they're like, so, and the fields the fields weren't weak. And I get it. Like, I get it from the professional standpoint. I get what Ironman's trying to do, right? Their response to T100 was, I see you throwing all these money at pros. We don't, like you said, like Ironman makes money from age groupers. They lose money from professionals. Like they're paying them money. We provide the revenue and the pros are the expense. And that's just kind of how it is. And like, but T100, I don't know how their model is sustainable. Period. They're just like tossing money in there. I know they can't even be close to making any money. But last year there weren't as many races, and then you didn't have the Pro Series last year. And I get it because I think it is important to provide these opportunities for professionals because it kind of allows for a pipeline for the, because I mean generally you have, I mean it's not like this in any other sport, right? You have like the top 10, the top 5 or 10 athletes, female and male in triathlon, like they make 95% of the money.
Right.
And the rest of them are like, how am I ever supposed to justify trying to actually go and be a professional and then have a much deeper field when I can't make money. I can't make a living. I can't justify quitting my desk job or my other part-time gig, like to go try to go pro because I can't make any money and there's not enough opportunities and they're not paying deep enough. So I get it from that standpoint. And then I also understand and maybe again, this is maybe me being partial to, how I grew up following the sport. There was you only got to watch like 2 races a year. Like it was Kona and then it was wherever the 70.3 World Championship we're going to be. And that's it. And I never missed it, and like, do I still get up early like this year and get up early and watch the Olympics? Sure. But that's the Olympic every 4 years. But a lot of the other races, like who are these people racing? And some of it, I'll admit, like North American bias, like you don't pay much of it as attention to some other, just like other continents, they don't pay as much of attention to what's going on in North America. But it's like one, you got so many people. It's nice to have like a top 2 or 3. And I do think this year was a little bit off because you had some lackluster performances from, the year before, which kind of like again, I think the perfect storm for triathlon where you had, Daniela Reef still at the top of her game, Lucy Charles Barkley going ballistic on pretty much everybody, Taylor Knibb, an up-and-coming superstar, which she's obviously proven that she is, going, doing also like, it's ITU, professional cycling, professional long distance. You got Lucy Charles Barkley, 70.3 and Ironman winning those championships in the last 3 or 4 years. You had the Norwegians, which everyone was all about for like, a year and a half where they were crushing everybody. And now they've haven't gone away, but they haven't done much. Sam Laidlow crushes Nice and you wanted to see him win Kona and he ends up walking, shuffle walk in the back half of it. And Patrick Lang is, not one of those, he's not one of the ones to be like, oh, I can't wait to watch his new YouTube video. Why? Because he doesn't make any, and then you got Lionel Sanders, who 3 years ago, everyone was like, oh, he's already reinventing the wheel for 2025. He's got the biggest, which is interesting, right? He's got the biggest YouTube following and like can't even sniff the top 20 at the world's best race and didn't even feel fit enough to show up to 70.3 worlds. So it's an interesting time, like in the professional arena of the sport. But I do think like one of the things that I've really gained, maybe not knowledge, but an appreciation for, and even a different coaching perspective is how, and again, it's always different when you're coaching age group athletes, even elite age group athletes compared to professionals, is how these athletes are either doing it well or not doing it well, going short to long and then back to short and back to middle and long again. And I think Cat Matthews was like the epitome of not perfection, but as close as you can get, racing well and doing pretty well at the T100 distance, right? And then going second at Nice, could you argue it was a little bit of a watered down field, right? Reef retired before the race, pretty much, and Lucy Charles Barkley didn't show up, had a couple other injuries, but you know what? You can only race who showed up, and she is a class act and probably my favorite female pro besides Taylor Knibb. But she was able to do that, right? So you go from, which is again so contradictory to what you always look through when you look at like traditional periodization, and you have to go through these long builds. A lot of it is just kind of shattering, I think, what was once thought of as how you had to have your year built out, you know? And so I think it's not changing my mind completely when it comes to age groupers, but it is allowing me, I think, a little more flexibility and freedom to maybe look, all right, maybe you can go long to start, and there's a path forward to then be able to go really, really fast long. But to me, like when I'm looking at these performances, I can't, in the last, I don't know, 12 to 18 months, all I've really thought about is it is more important than ever to be fast and strong. I mean, the way that they're training now, I don't think is that much different than the way they've been training the last 20 years. Like, you know, when Craig Alexander was winning, you had Macca, Miranda Carefrey, Chrissy Wellington. You know, I don't think what they're doing now is all that different, but you are seeing, I think, the guys that are, you know, came up that were really, 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 really fast, especially at the middle distance, how they're just absolutely annihilating everyone. And you've seen that Taylor Knibb, right? ITU background is, I would say she's unbeatable at the 70.3 distance. You look at the winner this last weekend, the top 2 or 3, 70.3, you know, experts, former ITU, like, and how important it is to be fast and to at least develop that part of your engine, which if you're, again, like talking about differences between professionals and age groupers and the race frequency is, you know, most age groupers, they like to get on a Ironman a year cycle or a 2 Ironman a year cycle, or I want to do 2 or 3 or the same one. And like, they don't necessarily have the time, again, because our lives are so different. Our bandwidth is different. Our bodies, our stress, you know, our abilities to recover is always extended because we don't, you know, we have responsibilities and spouses and kids and jobs and all these other things. We don't have what they have. You don't have a masseuse in the house or a physio or you know, they're taking like 12 hours of sleep and 2 naps a day and all these recovery tools they can use. Like, we don't have that. And so when you look at like the consistent long course focus of most athletes, then they don't ever get that time to go fast and be fast and get strong in the process. And I think that's just a very underdeveloped piece of the pie when you look at you know, an athlete's life cycle in terms of where they are and where they could see the most improvement. I mean, it comes down to energy and it comes down to expenditure, but the faster you can move, the more economical you can move. If you're more economical, you're saving energy. Going faster, you're on course longer, or excuse me, on course less. Like, again, you're saving energy. And I think that's a place where a lot of athletes struggle, is they just get stuck in that same year after year after year, you know, programming of when I'm going to do this 70.3, when I'm going to do a full. And, you know, even on a longer scale, right? Like a 6 to 12 month period, to me, it's absolutely no different than a 6 to 12 week, right? Your body gets used to what it's used to doing. That's just a fact, right? You wake up and it's winter and it's cold outside, your body gets used to it. And the first 60-degree day you have, it feels like it's 105. Right? You're like, God, I can't breathe. It's so humid today. It's like 60, right? Or the first cold day you get, it's freezing. Like you go on a diet, you do something different. Like your body gets used to it. Like, your body's not stupid. It's smart. It knows what to expect. It knows what to do. It knows how to operate. And, you know, I think that's just something that we have to think about even on a longer cycle. Again, like 60, your body gets used to things, and you have to change the stimulus. You have to change things up. So if you've been in one of those athletes who's been stuck, not in a rut, but you've been stuck in doing the same shit over and over and over and over and over again, the same race calendar, the exact same races. I mean, you're talking to a guy who says variety is for the weak, right? I'm a guy who loves predictability and loves doing the same stuff. I think it's fun, right? It's fun to change up, and you have to do that for your body. And I think looking at how, again, like, you can't take everything from professionals to age groupers, but we're still humans, right? We still have the same type of body and the same ability to respond, or maybe not respond to some of the same types of stimulus, even though it's not like the amount of hours they're putting in, their amount of intensity. You still shrink it, right? And if you're looking at what they do over 30 hours and the time they're able to put in at a mid 7 to high to low 8s for the females, and the fulls are 3s and low 4s for females, 7.3. Like, they're still doing it with a certain approach, and just because you're an age grouper, you can't copy and paste that approach, obviously, but you can see the benefits, of it. But your yield is going to be an 11 hour, right, or a 5:10. And so I think I just think there's a lot we can learn, not copy and paste, but I think there's a lot we can learn and explore, having watched the last 12 to 16 months, listening, reading, to what a lot of these athletes are doing. And again, while you can't copy and paste it, or it's not an apples to apples comparison, again, I think it's always important to remember, like, we're all human, right? We all have the same body, the same organs, the same blood, we breathe the same oxygen, and I think it just comes down to, like, when you look at your year, what do you really want to be great at? And do you just want to have fun and do a lot of good things, or do you want to really get after it and go after it? And that's very personal, right? You're a guy who, if you race twice a year, I question if you're over racing, right? If you're, if you got some people who, if they only race twice a year, you're like, are you retiring? Like, what's the deal? You usually like to race 12 times. So it's very unique, I think. But when you're looking to explore your abilities, especially in the early part of the year, and maybe that's a great way to kind of like look at your, I know the best year that I ever had racing was, again, I wasn't the best shape of anybody on the planet, but I was in the best shape I've ever been. I raced myself into shape from like April to June. I raced I think 4 or 5 times, all short course stuff, except for like a hybrid between Olympic 7.3 Disney one and Dixon. And I raced like a ton, and I focused on getting faster, and that ended up being my best overall year that I've had, because I kind of separated my year into early season, 5Ks, sprints, Olympics, 5K, sprints, Olympics. Like, I raced a ton, and then I took a big break, and then did like a 1 or 2, just a long build for a late season race that year, and ended up going really, really well. So I think it's great to kind of separate your year into 2 things, and I think you see a lot of athletes doing that, especially with the fact that the first race of the year, I think, for the T100 was in February, and then they just finished up the 70.3 World Championships in December. I mean, that's about as short as an off season as you've ever had for a professional triathlete.
Yeah, right. And it's all relative. I mean, yeah. You look at that and then you wonder, boy, how's that going to play out in the long term? Because it is like that real estate example you used. And it's like, how many realtors just get burned out, and they can kick ass for a few years or whatever, and then it just gets tough, like your year. You had a great year, and then you got to look at how that happened, how that, plays out, over time, because I same way, man. Like, I think if I wanted to race my shape, I'm just sort of thinking about this from a longevity perspective, and that's why I kind of approach it like I do, because I love, the training piece of it. I don't need to race it, but I do think that would help my, my racing. But it's a fine balance sometimes for me to decide how much to race. I don't know. It is, it's like interesting, because when we talk about happy and healthy, and like, what's the, real end goal? Is it to be a little bit faster, or is it to, do whatever? And it's just, I really, I just kind of keep that in top of mind, so it isn't necessarily always about racing for me. I'd like to do it. It's kind of like I call it, like I said, it's sort of my long-term compass. That's why I sort of keep putting them on the schedule, because it kind of keeps me in check, right. Sort of a wild hair up my ass all the time. Who knows where that'll lead, right? So it's like, I better not do that. I got a race coming up here. So that's good. It kind of keeps me honest. But yeah, everybody wants to race better, and I do think that the body is kind of incredible that way, and that's really sort of what I end up learning almost every year. Is like, I'll kind of half-ass it for a while, and then I'll turn it up for the last 2 or 3 months, and it is amazing how you know, it just kind of starts going, all right, this is what we're doing now. Let's do it. And I said this in the morning email today. One of my athletes, it was just so funny to me, but I get it. He did a easy zone 2 bike on Saturday and told me, man, he's really out of bike shape. His legs aren't there at all. And then Sunday I looked and he did like a blasting HIIT workout. Yeah, it's like, maybe that's just what he needed to feel, you know? I think sometimes that stale piece is real, you know? And there's a lot of times when I'll do that too, you know, where for years, like I love like a 30-minute blaster ride. It makes me feel great, you know? And it's sort of like, all right, you still got it, but you're not going to crush yourself in 30 minutes usually. I mean, it hits you hard, but it can kind of feel good. It can almost feel better than, you know, doing an hour and a half of easy. But, you know, you got to kind of, I think now's a really good time when, you know, the December rules and stuff is kind of to experiment with, you know, maybe find what kind of thing you really like, what kind of aligns with your body and what this sport means to you and everything like that. It's a good time to sort of toy around with little things like that. And, you know, there's obviously, you know, things we have to do and you have to, you know, build your base out and everything like that. But, you know, sometimes it is fun. I mean, I think a lot of times these pros are just like winging it and they're just like, let's try this. And they're going back and forth and maybe it does feel good.
You know, you said something about the compass there and it like jogged I guess not a memory, but like something I was listening to a podcast over the weekend and this guy was talking about, you know, because I love what you said about it's giving you something of a compass to something for direction for the year. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of athletes get, you know, like, you know how the compass looks when it's steady, right? It's just, it's one direction. That's exactly the way it is. And then you see it like when it gets close, like a magnet, like just jerks around the whole way. Well, that's like basically the two types of athletes that you have to work with. One that's steadfast and direction oriented and knows the direction and is very specific and particular about the way they want to go. And then the other one is all over the place. And the other part of that too is like, when you think about the trajectory of your year and how you want to get there, if you're off by even on the compass, if you're off by even a degree, being off by a degree after 2 months and think about how further and farther in the wrong direction you have become towards where you really truly want to go. You know, we use that, not that exact analogy, but we use it very similar when we talk about swimming. Like we can help athletes when we want to in the pool, but if we make them faster and stronger and they're just going in the wrong direction, they don't know how to sight, then it's actually making them worse because they're going to just get further and farther away from the course and they have to redirect. And so when you put these races on your calendar, you know, it's great to have like a very purposeful focus on like where you want to be and how you want to get there. But the fun part of it though is deciding on how you want to get there. You can go in the same direction. You can have a race or two. That's your focus. You can have something that you really want to get out of the year. And I love what you said about it's, you know, for age groupers, it should be about, you know, providing a why, providing a purpose, providing, you know, a compass and direction for where we want to go for the year. Because if we don't, we're lost. We're just flailing around, right? No direction. Anytime you have no direction, right, it's not very good, right? It's very similar to like with Hayden, you know, he's 8.5. If he doesn't have like tasks to stay to give him like a sense of purpose in what he's doing, and he just has, yeah, every kid should have free time, but a little bit of structure goes a long way. I mean, it goes a long, long way. And there is a distinct difference in how he operates and his attitude and the way he speaks when he's given 2 hours of total freedom in the house, right? Not outside. And it's interesting, like the differences of, hey, you get on there, go downstairs in the basement, because sometimes that's just how it is. Our kids are out of school and you both have to work. It's like, go down in the basement, you know, and go, you know, play Legos or, you know, watch a little bit of TV. And the difference between 2 hours of that versus 2 hours of being outside is just night and day. But then, like, if I give him tasks like you need to pick up the leaves, you know, pick up the poop, take out the garbage, build this, do this, he does so. We all do, right? We all do better with direction. We all do better with a purpose, with a goal. If not, we just like blow out in the wind. right? We're like that tissue we see rolling down the street on like 40-mile-an-hour winds with no direction. You can't catch it. It's just gone. And so when you provide yourself, or someone provides for you direction, accountability, you have a joint purpose and a joint why, like it doesn't just impact your training, it impacts your whole life, right? But again, there's also 45 different ways to get there. And I do think, and I agree with you 100%, that the pros experiment way more than we think they do. And that they all do something different. And I also, because I don't believe really anything anymore, I don't believe at least 50% of what they say. Because we've all gotten now to the point to where, I think people say things to which, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. I think especially pro athletes, they say things to get other people like thinking that that's the way to go, or that's the thing to do. I think we even joked about this like after the Olympics when, they were like quizzing some of the pros, like, what do you think? I do this. I'm like, if I'm them, I'm saying like, yeah, I only train 2 days a week and I put in 2 10-hour days and the rest of the week I just sit on the couch and recover. People would do that. They'd be like, oh, that's the ticket. That's what I should do. Because they're totally trolling most age groupers who sit there and think that everything they say is the gospel and then want to copy and paste it. And then we get an email. It's like, hey, I saw on this, like on the dark web that Lionel Sanders is now doing swim, row, bike, run, skip, hike, bricks. And he's just really advanced when it comes to thinking outside the box. It's not something you think we can weave into our programming this year because, he's still doing it at his age. Because then they just do that to troll you. And, age groupers, you believe it, you copy, you paste it, and do it the same thing. The point is, and we've talked about this quite a few times the last, I think the last 2 months is having a high level of conviction in what you're doing at the time, right? If you're going to be doing something you're going to, it's going to be different, it's going to be the same, you need to have a high level of conviction that it is the right thing for you right now, period. But on the flip side of it, it's okay. You need to also have a high conviction that what you're doing for you is only right for you. Doesn't matter what somebody else is doing. Doesn't matter if you're being told that's wrong. Doesn't matter if you're told that that's right. Doesn't matter if you're told it's too much or too little. You're doing too much easy or too much hard. Because a lot of it too, I think, is, I guess you can't consider it a placebo effect, right? But if you believe it's working, a lot of times it is. And that allows for, I think, bigger gains, better results, also better consistency. If you have buy-in, you're going to want to do it more. And if you do it more, you're going to get better. So there's also something to that. And so I think when you're experimenting with things or having a little bit of freedom or a little bit more flexibility, like you should be, to me, again, like that's the fun part of being a coach, right? Is one, you can experiment on yourself and do things that you might not normally want to do for the remainder of the athletes, but you can experiment. Or you can experiment with athletes. I tell some athletes, I'm like, hey, listen, I don't have any idea if this is going to work or not, but we're going to give it a fucking shot and let's see what happens. And it works or doesn't work. But I think the fun part of it is like treating yourself and what you're doing as a little experiment. And because to me, is even if it fails, you learned a tremendous amount versus, because even if you're convicted in the path that you're going on, and even if it ends up being the wrong one, at least you have a very specific box you can now put an X through. Not a check, but an X. And shut that door. Whereas athletes who flail and change protocols and change approaches every other week or every other month, go through 7 coaches a year, what are you even figuring out? You're figuring out, the only thing you're figuring out is you're impatient, inconsistent, and flaky. That's it. You don't learn anything. So it's better to like cross these off and fail than it is to wander aimlessly. Still do, but wander aimlessly, and then hope that on race day you're going to find something that sticks. So I do. I think that unless you have like an early season A race that's March or April, and it's your first or second year, like just experiment a little bit, But if you've been in this sport for a long time and you've done a lot of the same things, like change it up a little bit. And for coaches, that's super scary, right? Because you can see an athlete and they can do really, really well, and you can. And I did this just I don't know, the last like 8 to 10 weeks leading up to a couple 70.3s later in the year, 2 older athletes, 1 male, 1 female. I got peppered like every other day. And which is, I mean, and let's be honest, as coaches, you don't like being questioned every day. No coach does, right? Because even if it's like an exploratory, inquisitive, I'm just trying to learn, you're like, can we just do this? So I mean, I wouldn't say any coach loves it, but it was legit every other day from both. Hey, why am I doing this? Why this looks way different than what we've ever done before. You know, help me, you know, the typical like therapy speak, help me understand why, you know, why we're doing this. And then I respond in my, you know, therapy talk. What I'm hearing you say is you'd like more clarification on why we're doing things different than we've ever done before this late in the year. Well, one, they both raced a ton earlier in the year. So in my opinion, like a November, December race, they're both December races, 70.3s. It's like, what the fuck is there to lose? Like, you know, this isn't your A race. Right? This isn't the one you put all your eggs in the basket for. It was kind of a throwaway last minute pickup. So why not, again, you're not reinventing the wheel here, right? But why not change out a few spokes and change the tire and maybe even gloss up the rims a little bit and see what we got? Like, that's when you should really, same thing with early season races. Just check it out, see what happens. And I said, I'm trying something different. I think it'll work. Am I sure it's going to work? No, but let's change it up and let's see what happens. And they both had really, one of the male had best race they've had all year, and the female, you know, mid 50s, ripped off her fastest bike and run. The swim was canceled, but ripped off her fastest bike and run split ever at 54 after a lot of years of high competitive racing. Now, the tricky part for the coach is this now the way, right? Just because it worked in, you know, in a small, like, you know, sample size of, you know, a male and a female in 2 races and totally different conditions and separate parts of the country. Is this now the way? Have I uncovered the secret sauce? Hell no. It just happened to work this time. Do you learn a few things from it? Yes, you do. But you can't just take it and think, oh, well, now this is how I should approach their early season race next year in April. Because, you know, as coaches, and you're the same way, it's like you always go back and you think, all right, now what was the actual cause for the result? Was it this specific block, or was it the blocks that came ahead of it that then led to the stimulus that this provided, or the opportunity for the stimulus to be provided to then execute and have a great race? Right? Or if I had done this 12 weeks out and then a different one, would it all been different? Right? Or did you get lucky? Did they just have a good day? Or was it the whole year of consistency? Like, you always, like, I wish the job was that easy, right? You see it, you're like, oh, this is not the way. I can just now do, you know, repetitive 12, 16-week blocks with athlete, and we're going to keep crushing it. That's not how it works, right? Because you take a little bit of success, and you're like, all right, this probably worked because of this, and then you move on and you try to do it again. You don't try to do things differently. You should just always be open to doing things differently and living a little bit. Again, it's not like living on the edge. Like, we don't get paid for this, right? It's just, you know, as a coach, you get a little bit nervous, right? Because these athletes, you know, pay you, right? They're a customer. You're in a partnership. If you're a coach, this is your livelihood. But if you're not doing it, then you're really playing it safe. And if you're really playing it safe, you're doing your athletes a huge, gigantic injustice by just taking what you learned over your 48-hour USAT certification level 1 training cert, and you're only doing that for the rest of time. Like, you're just not doing your job. You have to explore, and you have to be, again, not risky, but you have to be willing to take risks. And again, this isn't with people's livelihoods or people's lives, right? This is about exploration. And I think that's why this sport is so addicting and so fascinating to so many people, is because it is so, there's so many opportunities to explore both the mind and the body. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not wanting to do that, then at some point you're going to fall from being excited about the mundane. And then you're going to not be as happy, and you're not going to work as hard, and you're not going to do as much, and you're not going to perform as well. and then you're going to fade out. And honestly, sometimes you just need to spice things up a little bit. And as long as you're doing it right in an intelligent, as close to a responsible way as you can get, then nothing but good things are going to come from that.
I think I heard once that, or more than once, but teacher in Latin means student or something like this. Maybe it was some kind of a Zen koan or something like that. But I always like that because, you said something earlier that it resonated with me too, is, we always do better with the direction. And that's kind of how I think about coaching, is sort of like, you lay out a direction, but I'm always encouraging athletes to take what they got. It's like, it's time, everybody talks about the science of the sport and all that kind of stuff. To me, science means experimenting with yourself and looking at the results and trying to figure shit out, and it's like our own little scientific world of experiments or trying new things and just seeing what's going to work, but kind of documenting and paying attention to that. So it's like if somebody's got, I'm sure, that's kind of been at the baseline of my best training in over time, is that like, you get out there and you got to work out and you're like, man, I feel like I got a little bit more here. So you can kind of push it maybe in some intervals, or maybe drag it out just a hair on the bike or whatever, swim a little bit longer. Or sometimes I swim a little bit less when I think I know I've got it, but I don't want to burn it out. I feel really good here. No need to go an extra 1,000 right now. I'll do that sometimes. It's just like, it is what it is. It's what I feel. I take what I got. I explore. I experiment and stuff like that. And I want athletes to do that. Under, I guess, the guidance so that we talk about integrity of a workout. If you see a workout, maybe that's not exactly what you're feeling, but just explore within the realm of that and kind of make it your own a little bit. But I do think that that's an important point because, I was thinking about, my last Wisconsin race and what do I regret most about that? And I think what I regret the most is being too conservative. And I think that the reason maybe I was conservative is because that's how I trained. I didn't explore. I didn't test myself or push myself in certain situations like maybe I have in the past. And I thought, well, shit, there's always this thing about play it smart and, whatever. And I get that, but that's, it's sort of like you play it smart, sometimes when, but I think these pros, and we talked about them earlier a lot, is that they're taking chances, man. I'm sure they take chances all the time, and to me, it's important to understand how to take chances too, and I think that that's what training is for. We talk about practice harder than you're going to play, and that plays a big role in my mindset with stuff like this, is that I really do feel like, I went out there to be conservative on the bike, for example, and I just think that was just it didn't really align with what I wanted to get out of that race. And I think that, just doing it to do it isn't really what I was feeling. It's like it would have been more rewarding in a sense to just go for it,
right,
and just see what happened. And then, okay, well, it didn't work out, or maybe it will, but to go through it and just sort of, that's the going through the motion shit that I think a lot of us face in triathlon training. It's like, well, I'm just kind of, and it's sort of this juxtaposition of, just show up, do the work, and it'll work out. And I get that, and it makes sense. But I also think that you need to see what you're, explore your limits a little bit more. And I think that should happen in the course of that direction. It doesn't have to be some wild hair all the time. It can be small little, like you always say once in a while, just go out and run a 5K and blow it out and just try and blow up.
Exactly.
It's the same principle that I think that is just sitting there for us all the time. And I don't suggest trying to blow it up on every workout, but that example I gave my athlete earlier, who just like, I felt like he probably needed to just see what he had, and blast a little HIIT workout, but not go overboard, but just get that, I always talk about that mind-body connection. I think your mind has to kind of feel what that feels like, and your body needs to explore a little bit more. And I know that, you know, and those people and those pros in the 70.3 they're just sort of breaking all these limits. You're talking about he was shooting for a 105 half. I mean, that is just like, you know, mind-blowing to me, you know, to think about. But they're stretching the limits, and it's bringing everybody with them. So I think that there's, you know, we're not going to be doing that, most of us, but it's fun to think about your own 105 and not sell yourself, you know, not talk yourself into not being able to do that. I always have so much faith in you know, it's funny. It's easy to see faith in, or, you know, kind of have faith in other people, you know, like, and I think that's a lot of what coaching is too, is that, you know, get people to see their potential and believe in it. Because if you can believe in something, you know, you're one up on that. But if it's kind of hard sometimes to see that in the mirror, I think. But if you have other people kind of helping you, you know, stretch yourself and break those limits, you know, it's just so mental, man. You know, I don't know.
No, I mean, I do. I think maybe every quarter, right? I think at least every quarter you should be brought to a walk during an interval or a like a recovery, you know, interval after a hard set, and you should have to stop your bike and quit the last 3 intervals, and you should get out of the pool early because you went too hard. Like, not every day, not every week, not every month, but once a quarter. Like, explore that limit. And I 100% agree with you that, and this was a lot what Hayden Wild said in his pre-race interview, and I think he even said it post-Olympics. Like, Olympics, he just shot a shot. He knew there's only one way to beat Alex Yee, and he fucking went for it. He didn't play conservative. I can't win. This is my goal. And because here's the thing, like, do you want to lose on your terms or somebody else's terms? Mm-hmm. And he lost the Olympics on his terms. I'm taking my shot. I'm shooting it. If I fail, I fail, but I'm the one in charge today, right? I'm not going to be paralyzed into mediocrity and be okay with fine, but because that's safe and I feel comfortable there, right? And at least I'm the one in control of my mediocrity, right? I might never be great. I might never be really good, but at least I'm not going to suck probably today. And I'm okay with that. And I think a lot of athletes race and train like that. And he even said as much in his post-race interview. I mean, again, it was like, you know, 5 minutes after he like was just destroyed. But he was like, listen, he was like, I knew what I wanted to do today. I thought I was capable of it, so I went for it. And if it in pre-race, he was saying like, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I want to go for it. Like, I love that kind of attitude. Like, and I think we get so caught. I think we have been, everyone. Yes. Have there been, you know, advances in technology on the bike? Sure. Have there been advances in technology in run shoes? Sure. Have there been advances in, you know, other areas, nutrition and fueling and storage and all these things? 100%. And I think a lot of times that is given way too much credit for the advancements in performances that we see. You know, oh, it's the data, oh, it's the lactate testing, it's the shoes, and it is the shoes, and it's the bikes and the bike position and the amount of money you're testing, and then it's the 58,000 carbs an hour people are taking in, and I 100% disagree. I think that while the shoes are providing faster run times, again, there was no super shoe that was proven once the mile was broken, and then it was broken like 27 times after that, right? And like that year, I think it's the same. I think it's about unlocking the mind and your potential, because here's the thing is like you can see somebody and you can think, fuck, right? And this is what everyone has when on the red carpet at midnight watching these finish lines. If they can do that, I can do that. And that can either be a 17-hour finish or a 9:10. Because honestly, I think this too, and I hope every athlete's like, what the fuck makes you so special? I think I can do that. And we find excuses to not believe in ourselves, right? Oh, it's the shoes. Oh, it's the bike, or it's the position, or it's, X, Y, and Z. But, we should have no excuses on that. And you should take risks, and you should try to fail. And I know it's hard to explain it even as a coach. It's like, hey, go watchless. I don't think I can do that. Okay, well then wear the watch and duct tape it, right? If you need to have it, you can have it, but just see what happens. And I've legit never had an athlete come away from a watchless experience with a negative feedback. It's always been, I didn't know I've been holding myself back so much. And I think you're seeing athletes not hold back, not be so, for the perception that all of these athletes are at the highest level of constant 100% monitoring 24/7, and that's where we're seeing these gigantic gains. I don't believe that. I think it's that you're seeing athletes apply themselves and go harder and not be willing to, and not being afraid to lose more than ever. And I think that's unlocking different times. And if you see somebody else doing it, you think that you're able to do that, and you're able to do, I mean, again, I hate to harp on him, but, Lionel Sanders is the perfect example of wanting to take every other pro athlete's way and make it his own. And he's tried to do that, 7 times in the last 3 years, and is still not being able to accomplish what he wants to accomplish, versus just trying to do his own thing and sticking to it. It's just the level of distraction is immense. And we have more opportunities to be distracted. We're in the age of distraction. Everything we do is about being distracted. But when you're looking at your own ways to explore, feel what it's like to explore that boundary, because that is what's going to unlock your potential. Because what it'll ultimately do is raise your performance potential, not through some data point and training peaks, but in your mind. And that's the most important data point of performance potential, is the one in your head. What performance do you think you are capable of? Because therein lies your ceiling. You provide it. Not other people. You provide. And so getting out there, and it was refreshing to look. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. I can't remember this coach's interview I was listening to. It was maybe 10, 12 days ago, but he was saying how much they still do things on feel, and how he thinks so much of what the noise is out there is not conducive to actually high performance sport, because it's more high performance tech than high performance sport. And that's sport. And this is a highly respected, highly successful coach that coaches professionals and Olympians. And he was like, we still do, I'd go by effort and heart rate, and we still do our swims by feel. And, we don't subscribe to a lot of the themes that everyone else does. That again is there's trying to explore things by purchasing things, and there's trying to explore things by exploring the mind. And I think that's the piece that, especially for age groupers, right, where 1 or 2 minutes isn't going to make a huge difference, right? This is what the pros are fighting for. They're trying to save 3 or 4 watts, right? And you're trying to do other things. And so exploring the mind, to me, and what you're capable of, is people always want to talk about and what's the next frontier in sports science. That's it to me. Not because I don't think we're there, but because I think we've regressed. I think it's been there before, but I think with our obsession with data and devices and being so controlled, that we have regressed in the frontier of how our mind controls our body and its ability. And I think getting back to that is, to me, it's very similar to, the resurgence in, during COVID. I was like, this is our life forever. Here we are. We're going to be stuck inside for the rest of our lives. This is our new normal. And then after everybody figured out that was bullshit, there was a resurgence in everyone wanting to be outside. Everyone wanted to go back to the gym. No one wanted to do things alone. We were community based. We regressed during that period because that's what we thought was right. That's what we were told. And now people are like, oh shit, maybe I missed out on what's the things that are crucial to being a human. And now they're back doing it more than ever. And that's what I think we need to remind ourselves to get back to is these feelings. I had this specific conversation with an athlete, a couple of weeks ago, high level athlete who wants to win a 70.3. And I said, listen, the best athletes I've ever worked with that got the most out of themselves understood and knew what it was like to feel everything. That's it. To feel everything, not to be restrained by everything. And that is, and that's something as a coach you cannot teach, right? You cannot provide that for your athlete. Like you can provide a number or a pace or a heart rate zone. Like you cannot provide their ability or inability to feel effort, and it's equivalent to how long they can sustain that level of energy output before they slow down. Only they can. And the interesting thing about it is that also changes every single day. And so knowing what those signals are, and so because they have to put the time in, they have to be willing to not look at their watch, to not stare at their bike computer, but to go by feel and listen to their breathing rate and listen to their feet hit the ground and listen and remember how to breathe when they're swimming and what feels like what, and swim 100. I mean, because to me the easiest is in the pool, right? Because you can't see your watch, whether you're working the wall clock or the wristwatch. You can't see any of it while you're doing it. So the best thing is like to swim 100. This feels like this pace, right? And this feels like a sustainable. You go and see it and you stop and redo it again. Pacing on your run, cover up your watch and see what it feels like what. See how long you're going to be like what. Or simply tell yourself, all right, I want you to hold 90 minutes at the highest effort possible. And then see what, again, very, 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 very challenging to understand what, all right, you want me to warm up for 10 minutes, then you want me to do a 90-minute all-out effort. Again, all-out 90-minute effort doesn't mean 110% out of the gate. It means your max sustainable 90-minute effort. And then what does that look like? So to know that and to feel that and to watch them go out way too hard and fail after 55 minutes, or to watch them get to like the 80-minute mark and all of a sudden increase by 40 watts because they play it too safe, or get to the 90-minute mark and they had only 1 minute left to empty the tank and they paced it perfectly. Like those are really great tests to do, right? In terms of learning about yourself and what feels that, because the cool thing about it is that nothing you learned can be put down as a data point on paper because you went by feel. And you felt what it felt like to hold that. So now the next time you need to feel, what it feels like. Because the interesting thing is, and where we kind of get lost, is the output will always change. Whether you're having a great day, your watts might go up by 15, but the feel will be the same because of how you're feeling. Or you had terrible sleep and you're super stressed and, you had a Five Guys, 16-pound burger beforehand, your watts might be sacrificed by like 30. But the feel's the same. So you can't say, oh, well, my this data point is 220. It was 220 that day. Next time it might be 240, 190, 202, 225. I mean, you just don't know. But to learn, because again, when you wake up on race day, that's the only feel you need to feel, is what you feel like today, and going by that. And it's either gonna overshoot, either gonna undershoot, or you're gonna hit the bullseye. And that comes down to just listening to yourself a lot and learning and exploring, again, the body and the mind along the way, not being a slave to the paper or the workout or the specifics.
Yep. There's a lot of power in understanding how that feels,
It ain't easy. I mean, I think that's the hardest part, right? It's really, really, really hard and takes a lot of effort to put into that, because I honestly think it's really scary for people to do now because they haven't done it ever. And so the longer you don't do it, the more out of touch you become.
It's fact, man. Sometimes I think the biggest mistake I ever made was going away from my chrono watch.
Hey, listen, bring it back, baby.
Yeah, I've experimented with it, but it's different now, It is different. I get why it would be hard to go back there, but you know, my best training, I feel like I used to run on like a greenway where it had mile markers, and I could almost pinpoint exactly what my pace was, mile to mile. I was like, that's about 8:40, and it'd be like 8:43 or something like that. I knew instinctively what that was. Or we'd go out to the trace and ride long, and then come back to
I was just thinking that
the last 12 miles are the hardest section, and we just blasted. It was more. I mean, it wasn't, you know, I mean, you guys, a lot
I don't
of guys
think I ever
watch
said, Mike, I can't keep up. I got to stay in zone 2.
Yeah, we just would just hammer, man.
Just fucking hammered it, man.
And we, you know, we had 12 miles left, and we knew what we had, and we just kind of had to get there, you know. And I think that learning that type of shit is really valuable.
Well, that's the, you know, we can end it there. That's a perfect example, right? Is that last 12-mile stretch is like, you know, when you're somewhere familiar, right? And so while variety, you know, is for the weak in some areas and some not, like that's a great point of where variety is not great, because when you know, right, like, you know, the terrain, like we know those last 12 miles are just fucking brutal. You take that and you think, right? You can't calculate. You do no calculations. You do just a quick self-check. You're like, okay, I know these 12 miles are going to suck. I know what hills are coming. I know what effort is going to take me. So this is the effort I feel I can sustain for X period of time to get me to the end without, you know, ending up at, you know, the 8-mile point and I'm totally destroyed. And if I have a little bit left, I can use a little bit of extra energy in the last, you know, falls flat, and I got it. But it's not a numbers calculation you see in a zone on Training Peaks. And I did this. What year was this? I think I did it this has been maybe before I got sober or somewhere in there, when I was, again, still racing at a pretty high level. I went out to trace every single time, and I would go easy on the way out to, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 miles. And then I would legit TT on the way back and see how fast I could get back. That was the workout. I just went out super easy. And then I wanted to see my average miles per hour, if I could get it to over 20 or 20, close to 21 on the return trip, which is hard. And it was no like watt range. There was no heart rate cap. Some days it was, you know, super hot. Some days it was perfect. Some days it was a headwind. And it was just, you gotta just, you know how long it is, right? You see the mile markers, you know you went 30 out, you know you got 30 back, and you know what they look like, and you know where the downhills are, you know what the uphills are. It's just, what do I feel like I can do for the next 90 minutes? You know, hour and 20 minutes or hour and 40, depending on how I'm feeling, right? What can I do, and how can I spend my effort and my energy in my head by knowing what my body is capable of that day? And that's all I did. And I still think those are like my fastest bike splits to date, or at least most of them. But yeah, I mean, there's so much we can learn. I think continue to learn, especially if you're newer in the sport and you got into the sport when all this stuff was readily available. You know, it's very similar. I know we're closing out, but to me, it's very, very similar to, you know, the generations that we see that came up with social media and texting, and lack of social skills and lack of communication. You know, they would rather text you 2 feet away than speak to you because they're not comfortable doing it. And to me, that's the exact same way as you know, maybe not exact, but a good analogy of thinking through, like, when you come in the sport and you've got all these devices and all these metrics and all these things to control, that you don't have any idea what's supposed to feel like what, and you cannot communicate with your body. And so, you know, if you got a little time, spend that the next few weeks, in the next few months, even however long it takes to explore, getting to know yourself, communicating with your body and what feels good and what doesn't feel good. Run to run, swim to swim, ride to ride, and do what feels right and push it. Sometimes till you fail, sometimes, you know, but a lot of times you're going to figure out things you never thought possible. And that's why the sport is so fun.
Yeah. Endless,
man.
Endless
Probably
experiments. All right, dude.
Well, some things must come to an end, like today's podcast. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to the website, c26triathlon.com. It is your one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you're looking for a coach to help you take your communication with yourself to its next level and provide you some direction and accountability for next year, check out the coaching tab and peruse the coach you find that is right for you. If you need anything from Mike, he's available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. Or if you need anything from me specifically, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man.
All right, dude. Check you Thursday.
Yep. See you.